The world believed Princess Diana's fortune would vanish into the royal vault after her death. They were wrong. When executors unsealed her will in 1997, they discovered something the palace never anticipated.
You think you know Princess Diana, right? The people's princess, the fairy tale bride, the royal icon everyone loved. But what if I told you that everything you thought about her final wishes is about to be turned upside down? Who did she really leave her estate to? And why did she hide a mysterious shadow trust that even the palace didn't know about? Today, we uncover the explosive truth the royal family never wanted revealed. A secret so powerful, so shocking, that it could change everything you thought you knew about Princess Diana. The fairy tale princess who became a rebel. Princess Diana was not born into invisibility, but she was not raised to be an international celebrity either. Diana Frances Spencer grew up at Althorpe, where she was surrounded by aristocratic traditions, but was also affected by her parents' messy divorce. She was just 20 years old when she met Charles III, and she was working as a kindergarten aide. She was quiet, soft-spoken, and almost shockingly typical. Then came the 29th of July, 1981. The wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral was a huge event, like something out of an empire. About 750 million people saw Diana walk down the aisle in ivory silk and antique lace. Her 25-foot train followed her like a comet's tail. The world didn't simply see a ceremony, it saw a crowning of optimism. She was young, beautiful, and up-to-date. People who thought the monarchy was cold and distant now felt warm. But when fairy tales come true, they can be dangerous. Behind the royal doors, loneliness set in quickly. Charles still had feelings for Camilla Parker Bowles, even though they had been together before Diana and never truly went away. Diana later said that she could feel Camilla's presence even before the wedding. The insecurity grew into something worse. She got bulimia, which was a private fight she would later talk about in public as a way to get control in a world where she felt powerless. The palace prized calmness. Diana was full of feelings. The flaws got bigger in the 1980s, but the illusion stayed strong until it didn't. The Camillagate tapes came out in 1992 and showed private phone calls between Charles and Camilla. The shame was felt all around the world. The formal separation was declared the same year. Then Diana did something that had never been done before. She broke the silence in 1995 when she talked to Martin Bashir on Panorama. She continued, calm, hurt, and clearly indignant. It was more than just a confession. It was a statement of freedom. The bashful bride changed into a completely different person, a lady who knew more about the power of the media than the people who raised her. At the White House, she danced with John Travolta. She became friends with Elton John. She shook hands with people with AIDS-son gloves at a time when many were scared. She walked through minefields in Angola, changing what royal service could be like. The palace valued stoicism. Diana used her vulnerability as a weapon. By the early 1990s, the fairy tale had not only broken, but it had also turned upside down. She was no longer the royal family's jewel. She was the strongest moral advocate for it. The establishment thought her volatility was bad for stability. The public saw that it was real. And that change, from a dutiful princess to a worldwide humanitarian rebel, did something that can't be undone. When a woman who has found her voice decides how her legacy will go on, it is never by chance. The ache that used to make her quiet became something much worse. The pain made her want to help others even more. Diana's brave work that changed the world. Diana didn't allow her despair stop her as her marriage started to break apart. Instead, she used her pain to do something. While the royal family sat silent and solemn, Diana spoke, behaved, and demonstrated that she cared. She was more than simply a princess. She was someone who could really change things. Every handshake, visit, and public appearance was a statement. She was saying to everyone, I won't be quiet. I will aid the folks that need me the most. Her trip to the AIDS unit at Middlesex Hospital in 1987 changed everything. People were frightened of AIDS back then. A lot of people felt it could be transmitted by touch, and patients were typically ignored or treated harshly. Diana didn't care about regulations, being scared, or what other people would think. She shook hands with patients without gloves and smiled, listened, and showed respect. She even said, HIV doesn't make me stop for a second. That simple act was more than a handshake. It was a statement to the world that being sick is not something to be ashamed of, and that everyone deserves care. People all over the world noticed how brave she was and started to treat patients differently. At the time, most people couldn't see how her modest act of bravery saved lives. But that wasn't the end of it. Diana's next job was much more dangerous: landmines. In January 1997, she went to the nation, where thousands of innocent people had been hurt or murdered by concealed landmines. She strolled carefully through the fields in a sweater and jeans, with no helmet or guards, just her bravery. People all across the world saw the photographs of her walking over the lethal mines. People were shocked, governments were embarrassed, and action finally happened. The Ottawa Treaty, which banned anti-personnel mines, was signed months later. Millions of mines had been demolished by 2023, and Diana's bravery had brought the subject to the world's attention. She had taught the world that one person could make the powerful do something. Diana also worked hard for other causes. She visited leprosy patients, made friends with orphans, and assisted the destitute. She made people feel better who were being overlooked by others. A lot of the time, the royal family didn't like it. Charles is said to have labeled her work attention-seeking. Diana didn't care, though. She realized that what she was doing was saving lives. Her labor for charity brought in millions of dollars, changed laws and rules, and gave hope to many people. Every time she visited or did something nice for someone, she showed that the monarchy couldn't control her heart or her effect. Her job was more than just helping others. It was a kind of protest. The palace had injured, trapped, and humiliated her, but she showed that she could stand strong and fight back by what she did. Every time she went to the hospital, every time she walked over a minefield, and every time she shook hands with someone, she broke the restrictions that tried to keep her quiet. She wanted understanding instead of obedience, which was what tradition wanted. The institution prized stillness, but she wanted action. Diana had learned that showing kindness might be just as strong as any royal order. Her divorce was official in 1996, and she was no longer stuck in an unpleasant marriage. But her fights were far from over. It was really hard for her because of custody fights over her kids and constant media attention. But Diana kept strong and on task. She started making plans for something that would still be there when she was gone. She wrote her will carefully so that her voice, her compassion for others, and her beliefs would continue to have an effect on the world. And here's the stunning part. She didn't just plan it in secret. This moment came after every brave thing she had done before: helping AIDS patients, clearing landmines, caring for orphans, and helping the neglected. Her last deed would make sure that Diana's strength, defiance, and kindness would never be forgotten, even after she passed. She has already changed people's lives around the world, but she was ready to change the rules for good with her will. Everyone was shocked by what she did next. Who would she give all to, and why? The answer would stun both the royal family and the public. But that story is next. Diana saw courage as going against the rules. Being kind was powerful, and when death drew near, her will became her most powerful weapon. The night Diana took control. It was July 1996 at the palace in Kensington. The room was full of sadness, but the summer air smelled like roses. Diana sat alone at her mahogany desk, and the lamp made long shadows on the walls. Pictures of her kids, William and Harry, beamed back at her. Their expressions were innocent in a world that had not been kind to them. She was 35 years old and had been through a lot. Her marriage was finished, her crown was gone, and millions of people had observed, judged, and picked apart her life. But that night, Diana would do something that everyone would notice. She grabbed her pen since she knew this wasn't just signing paperwork. This was her voice after she passed, her chance to choose what was most important. She could have quietly spent or wasted the £17 million she got from the divorce, book deals, and selling jewelry. Instead, she devised a plan that would shock the palace, the press, and anyone who felt they were in charge of her. It was clear, brave, and careful what Diana wanted. She gave 75% of her estate to a charity that had been important to her life, like helping people with AIDS, landmine victims, and children who didn't have families. She wasn't giving the world a quiet gift. She was making a statement about what was most important to her. She gave 25% of the money to trusts for her sons, William and Harry, but she wasn't giving them the keys totally. Every cent was safe. taken care of, and directed. Diana wanted to make sure her boys were safe and well cared for, but she also wanted to keep them from the brutality of the royal world she knew too well. And then there was the twist that shocked everyone. Paul Burrell, her butler for 10 years, was designated executor. The man who had cleaned her shoes, kept her secrets, and been her quiet support, was now in charge of her money. He would be in charge of all the trusts, distributions, and donations to charity. In other words, the one person who really knew her heart would be in charge of her legacy. Not a lawyer in the palace, no counselor to the king, just Burrell. That night, Diana didn't disguise how she felt. She cried gently as she signed each paper and told Burrell, "This is my last chance to be free." Her statements weren't just for show, they were real. Every stroke of her pen was a protest, a reminder that betrayal, divorce, and unrelenting scrutiny had not shattered her. The palace sought to get involved. Lawyers were circling, talking in low voices about instability and amendments. They wanted her to alter it so that it followed their rules. Diana's fingers didn't shake, and her heart didn't either. This was her time, and she wouldn't give it up. She made sure that nothing was left to chance. Her will was very clear. All of the jewelry, property, art, and cash were counted. The Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fund, AIDS work, landmine campaigns, and children's causes that she loved will go on even after she is gone. Her boys' trusts were safe and well-structured so that they would gain without getting involved in royal games. Diana had written a paper that was both useful and strong, but the true shock was about to come. The twist that no one saw coming. Most people thought the estate would only help her sons and charities, but in the end, one person had the keys to everything. One person who could decide what would happen to her stories, her treasures, and her legacy. One individual who would make sure that Diana's voice, her defiance, and her power would be heard for years to come. Who was the person? And why did Diana put her faith in them? That narrative would blow out in ways that the palace, the media, and the world weren't ready for. But for now, the only thing that mattered was that Diana was in charge. She had written her will. She had done her last act of defiance. And with that pen, she had taught the world that even death could not stop her from speaking. Who really inherited everything? On the surface, Diana's will looked simple. £17 million was carefully split up, with most going to charities and some going to her two sons, William and Harry. But the true shock was what was buried between the clean lines of the paper. The one person who had complete control over her estate. Paul Burrell was Diana's butler, her friend, and her silent protector. He wasn't simply a servant. He was the one who knew all of her deepest secrets, like the letters from lovers that she kept concealed and the late-night discussions in the kitchen. He had been there for her through bulimia, grief, and times when she was scared. He now had the keys to her last wishes. Burrell was the only executor, which meant he had the ability to decide how to manage each and every part of Diana's estate. He might sell her jewelry, including the £250,000 sapphire ring, run her £6 million stake of Althorp, and give away millions of personal goods. The palace found this disturbing. A common butler was suddenly in charge of a royal treasure trove, which kept Diana's story going even after she passed. The royal butler trial in 2002 was the first time the world saw the tension boil over. Burrell was accused of taking 321 things, including gowns, letters, and even William's baptism gifts. People were shocked by the idea. Could a friend of Diana's truly take her things? The courtroom drama showed how much he knew about her life, her private sorrow, and what she wanted to do. In the end, he was found not guilty when it became evident that there had been a storage plan. Burrell left, and some of the items were sold at auction for £4 million. Others were kept safe, which he named Diana's voice. And here's where it gets even more interesting. A lot of people wondered if Diana had planned this all along. Did she want Burrell to be the only person who could protect her legacy and make sure her wishes would be carried out even if the royal family got in the way? Or was it a smart maneuver to keep the palace away, giving her independence even after she passed? Burrell's 2003 book, A Royal Duty, gave a hint about the answer. Parts of Diana's will were made public, which shocked the royal family. Charles reportedly labeled it treasonous, while Harry branded it betrayal. Burrell's job was more than just carrying out Diana's wishes. He also kept her memory alive. He controlled how the world remembered her by holding auctions, writing memoirs, and selectively releasing stories. Her dresses, letters, and other personal items became icons of her life. and they were the subject of tabloids and documentaries for years. Diana's narrative lived on in every choice he made. Her acts of kindness and disobedience continue to shock and inspire people around the world. He had a lot of power. Picture this. The palace couldn't go into some portions of her domain without his permission. He could choose which charity got money, which tales the public saw, and even how her things were shared. Burrell became Diana's voice from beyond the dead in a way that worked. And the twist? People didn't think a butler could have that much power, especially over a woman whose life was always being watched by the royal family. Burrell's power was not the only secret, though. Diana's instructions had it in the fine print. Not everything in her will was about money or things. It was about trust, safety, and going against the rules. She chose someone who was devoted and had been through the same things she had to make sure her story wasn't changed, ignored, or silenced. Every choice he made after that, from auctions to memoirs, was based on what she wanted. Every story, picture, and sale was part of Diana's plan to make sure the world remembered her truth. For years, people spoke about him and made up stories. Some people said he had betrayed her, while others said he was using her memory. But the truth was more complicated. Burrell was picked for a reason. He was the only person who could protect her wishes, her children, and her humanitarian aspirations while keeping her voice alive in a world that often misinterpreted her. Diana had, in a way, outsmarted the monarchy and controlled her legacy in a way that few people could have imagined. But there was still more going on behind the scenes, even with Burrell in command. The secret that Diana wished the public would never fully find out. Diana's secret shadow trust. Diana's will was clear to most people. It left money to charity, her boys, and her personal belongings. But she had one last trick in her sleeve, a secret clause called the shadow trust. It was hidden in public documents and had been running for decades. It has transformed all we thought we knew about Diana's plan. Paul Burrell and a small group of lawyers set up the shadow trust. Diana had put aside £2 million from her bequest to go to charities that opposed institutional oppression. This money wasn't only for charity, in other words. It was meant to covertly help people and movements that were against the royal system. This was a very brave step that had never been done before in royal history. No one realized it was there for a long time. The money was sent out in stealth through offshore accounts and other private routes. Diana made sure that neither the palace nor the press could easily find it. She wanted the money to help bring about change without anyone noticing. In the present day, the shadow trust seems to be linked to a number of important events. Some royal watchers think it helped Harry and Meghan speak out more against the palace's regulations. For example, the trust's donations may have helped Harry's 2019 interview with Oprah and Meghan's work with Archewell, making sure that Diana's principles of truth, fairness, and rebellion went on via her sons. It doesn't end there. People who watch say that the trust is linked to anti-king groups like the Republic, which want to limit the power of the monarchy. There are even rumors that Diana's secret clause may have helped pay for the Sussex files, which were revealed in 2026. These disclosures rocked Buckingham Palace, revealing possible cover-ups and sparking arguments about Diana's death, how she was treated, and how her family dealt with her legacy. What surprised me the most? This wasn't a mistake. Diana seemed to plan for the future, thinking that the royal family might still be chilly or domineering toward her sons. The shadow trust provided her with the power to silently shape events even after she passed, making sure that her voice and her beliefs still had an effect. Picture this: a secret fund that started in 1996 and has been steadily spreading out for 25 years, changing news headlines, interviews, and philanthropic activities. Millions of pounds moved without a sound, and every motion was linked to Diana's goal. Her estate wasn't just money in accounts. It was a sleeping monster, a hidden force that could wake up and take the kingdom she had once avoided. People have been talking about the trust for years, since it is so secret. People who follow the royal family think it has something to do with the Diana dossier leak in 2024, which showed information regarding her life, charity, and personal problems. Could Diana have known that her sons would one day fight in their own way? A lot of people think that the shadow trust was her method of laying seeds for William and Harry's future acts, letting her legacy guide them in a quiet but effective way. You can't say enough about how important Paul Burrell's part was in all of this. As executor, he made sure that the trust worked the way Diana wanted it to, without the palace getting in the way. Every gift, every anonymous payment, and every leak that had to do with the Shadow Trust was a direct continuation of Diana's strategy. She made a good choice by putting her most trusted friend in charge of her final revolt. What does this signify for the family of the king? All of it. Diana's estate included more than just her own money. It became a strategic tool that swayed public opinion, her son's choices, and even the actions of the government. Her Shadow Trust showed that she was planning for the long term by utilizing her money to safeguard her ideals and make sure her voice couldn't be suppressed. And here's the part that will make many gasp. The Shadow Trust might still be going on today. Diana's forethought might still pay for some donations and disclosures, which would maintain her influence alive even 30 years after her death. What she initiated as a secret part of a will could change how the royal family works for many years to come. Diana's narrative teaches us a lot. She didn't only live bravely, she prepared her revolt to persist even after she passed. She put together a puzzle with the charities, the trusts, and the secret funds to make sure her ideas would last. The Shadow Trust is more than just cash. It's a message. Diana's legacy can't be stopped, and she can still affect everything, even when she's not talking. But the story doesn't end here. What other secrets of the Shadow Trust are still waiting to be discovered? The backlash and the emotional price. Diana will hit Buckingham Palace like a bomb, shocking the royal family. The document was the last straw for Charles, who was still upset about the divorce that took away Diana's HRH status. He thought he was taking money from his family's wealth and giving it to charity, but Paul Burrell, a butler, was in charge of the estate. Camilla didn't say anything, but people close to her claim she was furious at how Diana's influence still affected her. The Paris inquest in 2007 only made things worse. Scott Baker, the coroner, said that Diana's death was an unlawful unaliving because of the paparazzi chasing her and Henri Paul's inebriated driving. But rumors of foul play, together with Burrell's handling of Diana's personal possessions and the will's secrecy, set off conspiracy theories in the media. Charles is said to have dubbed Burrell a thief of memories, while Harry and William reacted very differently. Harry, the younger son, thought that the will's anti-establishment tone was fair. In his 2023 memoir Spare, he said that the palace was institutional violence, tired, which was in line with Diana's rebellious nature. William, the heir to the throne, kept his cool in public, but he was said to be angry over Burrell's auctioning off of antiques and the favoritism shown to charities, which he saw as a way for the palace to avoid his supervision. In 2010, Burrell sold Diana's clothes for £1.2 million, which made the situation even worse. Palace attorneys looked for misuse, but the auction was a clear message. Diana's legacy could not be stopped, and her voice would continue on. This fight over legacies was about more than money. It was a rebellion against hundreds of years of royal tradition. Diana's estate had become a weapon, and her last act of defiance would go on through time. Diana's influence went beyond Buckingham Palace, though. Her will brought about a transformation all around the world. The Diana Memorial Fund gave millions of dollars to AIDS research, which led to faster medicines, less stigma, and the 2003 PEPFAR initiative, which saved more than 25 million lives. The £3 million she left behind for landmines helped the international campaign to ban landmines win the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997. By 2023, 164 countries had signed the Ottawa Treaty, which got rid of more than 70 million mines. Even selling jewels had a purpose. The £500,000 Saudi sapphire ring that was sold to raise money for Elton John's AIDS Foundation made Diana's voice heard all over the world. Althorpe, her childhood home, was turned into a museum that gets 100,000 visitors a year and keeps her narrative alive for future generations. Diana's estate altered everything. Regulations were amended, societies were affected, and awareness of humanitarian issues grew. Her money became a way to show kindness, showing that one woman's will could change the world for the better. But the most important effect was quite personal. The will's emotional toll hit the people she loved the most. William and Harry were the estate's heart. They got £10 million trusts for school and independence, which the palace couldn't touch. But freedom had a price. Harry felt trapped by the shadow of her death, even if the trust had protections in place. He talked about how hard it was to grow up with the burden of a legacy in 2020, when he left royal duties. This sorrow was directly related to the precautions Diana had put in place. William, on the other hand, put his grief into public efforts like the Diana Award. He was said to have trouble with the Shadow Trust's anti-royal views, which occasionally made things tense between him and Harry. The document was also tormented by lovers from her past. Hasnat Khan, her soulmate, didn't get any money, but Burrell kept letters from him, which led to allegations in 2004 that she had a secret engagement ring. After the crash in Paris, Dodi Fayed's family sued, saying that the will hid royal interference, a plot that Burrell wrote about in his book. These lost letters, transcripts, and notes that showed Charles's affairs and private problems became emotional landmines for the lads who had to deal with loss, rage, and new information all at once. Diana's estate was strange. It hurt and healed. It gave her voice to her sons, helped charities, and supported causes around the world. It also made people angry, made family tensions worse, and left questions about her private life that were never answered. Princess Diana's story shows courage, love, and defiance that still echoes today. If this blew your mind, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to uncover more shocking royal secrets. Comment below who surprised you the most.